after what seemed like many months. It's actually only been a month, but the show we've all been waiting for is finally back. The Walking Dead is back. This is going to be my review for the mid-season premiere of The Walking Dead, Season 4, Episode 9, After. Now, I know when you guys probably thought, you probably looked at my Twitter and said, oh, he did not like this episode. No, I really did like this episode. What I'm saying is that I felt that tonight's episode was a little bit boring, but I really did enjoy it. I thought it was a really great episode with some really amazing performances. I mean, definitely, I don't know who plays Carl, but he gave a really good performance this episode. I don't know why people thought he was annoying, because I thought he did a really good job. I really enjoyed the episode, though. Definitely, probably one of the most emotional episodes of The Walking Dead, because, as we know, they're now recovering from all of this, and they're still trying to recover and process what happened with the governor and the prison being destroyed. It's too much for them. So let's just get to this video. So, we see Carl and Rick. We're going to get to Carl and Rick first, then I'll get to Michonnes. But let's first talk about Carl and Rick, since they are the central focus. I will say I have one complaint with this episode. I would have wanted to see more of the characters. What happened to Glenn? What happened to Maggie? What happened to Tyrese? What happened to Daryl? Where is he? What happened to Sasha? Where's she? What about Bob Stookie? What about those characters? We don't really know what happened, what happened to those characters. We really don't know, but it looks like next week we might see, but that was my only complaint about this episode. So Carl and Rick are walking down a lawn road. Rick keeps telling Carl to slow down, but he doesn't listen. Rick tells him to stop and that they have to stick together to find food and a place to stay for a while. Carl stops for a second and keeps moving, not talking to him. Carl tells Rick to stay, watch, and let him do it since Rick can hardly walk properly. The two go in together with their gun pulled out. Rick finds the kitchen cleared. Carl goes into the next room. A walker comes out. Rick shoves the axe in its head. Carl then shoots it in the head, and Rick tells him to never do that again because every bullet counts. So really, Carl at this point wants to take charge. He wants to basically be the leader because he knows that Rick is in very bad shape, and he just wants to completely take over. Which, how do I feel about Carl taking over? It makes perfect sense. He's growing up. For people who are saying Carl's annoying, no, he's not annoying. He just wants to take over. And every single teenager can relate to this. If I was in a life or death situation like this, and one of my family members was dying, of course I'd want to take charge. I mean, anybody would. So, anyone who says Carl's annoying, I did not find him annoying. I just found that he was very determined to take charge and save his father. That's what I felt. So then Rick and Carl, they're now out again walking. Rick keeps calling after Carl, but he won't answer. Rick catches up. The two decide to go into a house. Carl goes one way. Rick goes the other. Rick tells Carl to stop. Carl starts knocking on a door and swearing on the wall and swearing. Rick tells him to watch his mouth, and Carl tells him if there were any walkers, they'd come out. Carl goes upstairs, checks the bedrooms while Rick is in the kitchen. Carl notices that there is a lot of cool things and then unplugs one of the wires, ties it around the door. Rick shoves the couch to the door. Carl reminds Rick of Shane, and Rick tells him he remembers Shane every day. I personally don't even know who Shane is. I know he was in a season, but I did not watch seasons 1 through 3. So sorry guys, I did not feel anything from that scene. I mean, you could definitely see the, Shane, I'm guessing he was like Rick's best friend or something. I don't know who Shane is. All I've seen of the first few episodes are the first episode of Season 1 and the first episode of Season 3. That's all I've seen of The Walking Dead, as far as the first 3 seasons have gone. So the two then just put the couch to the door completely. Rick offers Carl some food, but he says he doesn't want any. Rick tells him to eat it anyways and goes to the washroom to look at his wounds properly. And Carl wakes up and notices Rick is still sleeping. He gets off the floor, gets something to eat, he pours himself some cereal, starts to read a book. He then goes downstairs and finds Rick still sleeping. Carl calls for Rick, but there's no answer. And it's like we saw in the promo. He's like, wake up, wake up. He kicks Rick's shoe, but he isn't waking up. Carl starts shoving him, but he won't wake up. Carl starts yelling at him, and walkers are now going against the door now from his voice. Carl goes outside, calls the walkers. The walkers turn around and start to follow Carl. Carl takes him for a walk away from the house and starts walking backwards down the road. Carl walks to a forest, or, and a walker. a walker comes from behind. So at this point, I actually thought Rick could have possibly died, but then I thought, wait a second, he's the main character. Rick cannot die from this. This doesn't make any sense. Carl then falls down, starts to kick at the walkers. He shoots one in the head and another. They both fall on top of him. Carl shoots the third one, but they are on top of him again. Carl now struggles to throw them off and then throws up when he gets out. Carl puts his hat back on and picks up his gun. He tells the corpses he won and walks back onto the street. Carl makes it back to the house and tells Rick about killing 3 walkers, but he is still just laying there. He then goes on about saving Rick and mentions he still knows how to survive. Carl then tells Rick he doesn't need him anymore and can actually take care of himself, which is true. Carl, again, he's growing up. He doesn't really need Rick anymore, and I like seeing this because people say Carl's an annoying character, but I just think he wants to take charge. I've never found Carl annoying, honestly. I haven't. I've just found him as someone who's growing up and wants to take charge. That's what I see. He tells Rick that he could not protect anyone from the prison, not even Judith or his mother. Carl says now they are all gone because of him. They counted on Rick because he was their leader. Carl sits down and says that Rick is nothing. Carl then says he would be fine if Rick died. Now, this is kind of wrong here. Rick made that whole speech in the mid-season finale. I was like, Carl, what are you talking about? He made that whole speech in the mid-season finale about how you're not too far gone. He almost died because of the governor. He had a very gruesome fight with the governor. But I think what Carl's trying to say is that if Rick had just died a while ago, none of this would be happening, which is kind of true. The governor did all this because he had a grudge against Rick, things like that. I mean, I see Carl's point. Carl has now left the house. He's walking down the road. He finds another house, decides to go check it out. He pulls one of the yard lights to use as a weapon first. He goes to knock on the door down, falls down on the floor instead. He then just breaks the lock with his new weapon. Honestly, I laughed at that. I thought that was funny. I mean, he wants to take charge, and then he's getting hit by a door. So clearly he does still need Rick, even though he feels he's maturing. I mean, I thought that was kind of funny. Carl falls back, fires off 2 shots into the ceiling. Carl is out of ammo after hitting the walker in the face. It starts crawling after him, and Carl kicks away as he struggles to run. Carl gets into one of the rooms, unlocks the window, but fails. He hits it in the head with a lamp, then almost gets his leg bit. He escapes barely and shuts the door. Carl then writes on the door with chalk that a walker is inside and it got his shoe. Carl is on the roof of the house, now eating some chocolate pudding from a can. And, so yeah, that's what's happening in that scene. Again, just really intense right here. It really is intense here. And, so that was basically what was going on there. And there's, the only other thing we need to say is that we then see Carl's back at the house. He's sleeping around the floor next to Rick. Rick starts moving his hand a bit. Carl backs away thinking he might be a walker. Carl pulls out a gun. Rick hits the floor. Rick holds his hand out to Carl and Carl says he can't do it. Rick calls up to Carl and tells him to stay safe and not go outside. Rick then passes out again and Carl admits that he is scared. So Rick eventually does tell Carl that, he knows they're not going to be able to get things back to the way they used to be, but they're going to try to do the best they can to fix things. So, before I can say what happens at the end of the episode, I have to get now to Michonnes' plot, because Michonnes' plot was also really, really big. We saw in the very beginning, which I really love this scene. I thought this was really big. We see a bunch of walkers surrounding a tank and are walking inside the prison, because as we know, the prison is basically just destroyed now. We see a close-up of the governor dead, so that this way we know he is dead. Standing there is Michonnes looking at the prison that is now all lost. She starts to walk back, notices something burning inside. She's walking there, cutting off the head of any walker in her way. And she even sees Herschel's head as a zombie and stabs it, making sure nothing of him is left as a walker. She's now out walking with her 2 new walker friends and notices footprints going up a road. She instead walks into the forest. Now, this next scene I really love. Definitely, this was one of the strongest scenes of the episode. We then see a flashback, and it's actually Michonnes with 2 men, 1 friend, and the other, her parents, some guy that was, I guess, her boyfriend or something like that, but his name was Mike. And the guys are going on about how this isn't a life they should be having, they don't know what to do, especially for their kid's future. She then sees the 2 men without their arms in their chairs and screaming, and it was all a nightmare. And I thought that was really a big scene, because it kind of got got to show what Michonnes' life was before this, and I really like seeing that, because I like that we're kind of getting more into Michonnes' past, which is not really something we've known, is Michonnes' past, and I really love that about, that scene. I thought that was definitely, probably, maybe even the strongest scene of the episode, because I thought Michonnes, I forgot the name of the actress that played her, but she gave a great performance in this episode. She was amazing. In fact, I thought Michonnes' was the strongest part of the episode, because now she's recovering from all this, and we don't know what exactly is going to happen with Michonnes, but we'll have to see. She's then walking in the forest with her walkers on their leashes, and she follows a giant herd of them. She's then walking in the forest with the walkers. Looks like she's getting uncomfortable by looking at them all, especially the one walker that looks a bit like herself. She gets its head off, starts just chopping off the head of every walker around her, just like in the beginning, and even has her 2 on leashes as well. She has 2 walkers on leashes. So then Michonnes has made her way backwards and notices the footprints in the mud again. She then starts to follow them. At the same time, this is when the Carl and Rick scene was going on. She walks in the bar, which Carl and Rick were in days before. She finds the dead walker and then sits in a corner and says she misses Mike. She says at back of the camp, it wasn't him who did it. She says he was wrong because she is still here and he could be too. She says she knows the answer. Michonnes then leaves the bar and cuts off the head of a zombie outsider. And that scene was so amazing. The way she was just lamenting over Mike, who I don't know who he was exactly. We'll have to see more about him. I'm guessing we're going to see more flashbacks, because they said it's going to be more of a psychological thing, and I think this is what they meant, more of these kind of flashbacks. Rick is now awake and tells Carl he should have rested because it is dangerous, but it is good he found more food. Carl says he found more, but he ate it. Rick asks what it was. Carl tells him it was 112 pounds of pudding. Rick says they will never get things back to the way they used to be. Rick says sorry, and Carl says there is no reason to be. Michonnes, walking down the street, finds an empty can of pudding laying on the road. She goes in the window and notices both Rick and Carl inside. So now Michonnes has found both Rick and Carl. Knocking on the door tells the 2 to get up. Rick then starts to laugh after looking through the eye hole and tells Carl it is for him. So overall, yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. A couple things that I really liked about this episode is, one, Carl is really starting to mature as a character, and Rick is seeing that as well. Especially at the end, you know, Rick tells him it's for you, and as in, Carl is now going to be the leader, because as we know, Herschel's now dead, so who's going to take his place? Possibly Carl. Carl could take his place. The thing is, Carl is young. I believe he's only supposed to be like 14 on the show. But again, you know, you have to remember this is kind of a life or death situation. And I do like that Rick and Carl, even though Carl got pissed at Rick in the beginning, they did make amends at the end. The strongest part of this episode, though, was Michonnes' plot. I thought definitely that was the strongest part. I think she just gave an amazing performance in that scene. I loved every minute of her scenes. She was really, really good. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. We really didn't get, you know, there's really not much else to say. What's going to happen with Michonnes? Do you think Rick and Carl are going to live there now? It looks like next week we're going to find out what happened to Glenn and Maggie and Beth, and I wonder if we're going to see Lizzie again. It looks like Judith is dead at this point. They didn't say anything. They said Judith is basically dead. I don't know if that's certain, though. We do know that the governor's officially dead, so who's going to be the new villain on the show? We'll have to see. Overall, though, fantastic episode. Really enjoyed it. It was probably the most emotional episode of the show. Not as gruesome as the mid-season finale, but it was a good episode to start off from that. And even though I said it was boring, I still loved the hell out of the episode. I'm just saying that it was a little bit boring for me. There were some parts where I'm like, alright, move it along a little bit. Like, there were some scenes with Carl just sitting, like the scenes where he was eating the pudding. I understood what they were doing with that. You know, I understood that. But at the same time, I was like, alright, this is a little bit boring. Can you move it along a little bit? But overall, I really loved the episode. That's it for my review. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you guys in my next video, which I don't know what it's going to be. But I'll see you guys then. Bye.